You are watching Co-op for Two. I'm Jesse. I'm here with Greg.
Thanks for having me on our channel.
And today we're reviewing the cooperative card game, The Liberation of Rietburg.
In the Liberation of Rietburg, you are defending a castle against hordes of monsters. There are various areas of the castle, each of which will have a face-down task and face-up and face-down encounter cards. The way that you'll win the game is by completing 4 of these tasks before the deck of narrator cards runs out. Over the course of a round, you will have a hand of 3 cards. You will be playing one of 6 characters, each of which who plays quite differently. On your turn, you will play a card from your hand and complete one of the choices you have on that card. If you have played all of your cards, you will have to take a refresh action and pick all your cards back up. When you do so, you will have to play one of these narrator cards. The narrator card will bring further challenges and counter cards out, thus making it more difficult and running your clock down. The various actions that you can take over the course of the game will include fighting monsters, moving monsters or encounter cards around, whether face up or face down, or flipping monsters or encounter cards face up or face down. Additionally, you can gain supplies like willpower or arrows and some special abilities. You can also move around various areas or bring other characters to join you in various areas. You will be fighting monsters and sometimes having teammates help you to fight some of the stronger monsters. When you defeat a monster, there is usually an effect that you'll get, and you can chain those together to your advantage, such as flipping cards face up or face down, defeating face up or face down threats, gaining money, as these cards will go into your trophy case, or sometimes gaining new cards for your deck in the form of friends. These friends, when you draw them, will now be a new card that you can play from your hand and have some beneficial effect. It will also lengthen the game as you will now have to refresh less often. If at any time you've managed to eliminate all of the cards that are on top of a task, as a free action you may look at that task. If you're able to complete it at that moment, then you may. If not, you'll have to wait till later in the game. This particular one, as an example, is the Drunken Troll. You must collectively have 3 friends. So if you were to have, over the course of the game, collected a number of friends, then you would be able to complete that goal. You will not complete all of the goals over the course of the game, so you do have some decision making as to what goals to pursue as the game continues. And that is the name of the game that I can't remember.
Liberation of Rietburg.
That's it. All right, so that's how the game plays, and now we're gonna have a little discussion like we normally do. We're kind of in a new territory. This is a
we're
little,
trying some different format stuff.
Yeah. So, but I will say,
Yeah.
Jesse, what's the name of this game?
The Liberation of Rietburg. But before we started, Greg insisted on calling it the Liberation of Rietgard several times, and it's like the defense of Rietburg. It's very hard to remember. It's not made for an English audience. It's a German game.
Well, that's
by
true
German
also,
developers.
by the way. But Rietburg is in the land of Andor. It's not like it's a German city. Well, maybe that is also a German city, but wow. Okay, so a little bit hard to remember and maybe spell and ever remember what it is. It's just the Andor card game, I guess is what we call it.
Yeah.
Andor.
Now, it's based in the world of Legends of Andor, which maybe we'll talk about a little bit. Very mixed reaction about. But we started out saying this has nothing to do with Legends of Andor, but it actually does have a little bit of some feel of it.
So I guess that's the theme of it, which we usually like to tackle first.
I guess we should start
so let's talk about the theme. But the theme is like right there, right? So it is. I mean, you do recognize there's a lot of that repeated artwork on your standees and stuff like that. So I mean, but
Michael Menzel,
who's, this board is gorgeous, obviously. Well, I guess we'll just say the art in this game is very beautiful. Like, this board is very lovely. In fact, you'll see I I talked Jesse into pushing all the cards off it so you could really see the artwork on the board. There's this cool dragon that's hiding there that's showing us that we're about to die. So it is very nice to look at. The card art
Where's
is
that
very,
beautiful
very lovely.
sea serpent woman?
Yeah, and then there's this woman. So there is quite a nice amount of art on the stuff. The monsters themselves will look a little wacky to me. I guess I'm not as thrilled with the artwork there. It almost, and I guess that maybe the reason why is because it doesn't look like it connects to this artwork. I feel like it looks like it doesn't. It wasn't done by the same person, but I don't know. So and like these cards are, I guess they're serviceable, but not as like the contrast in these colors is what really pops and looks exciting for me. But so thematically though, it's weird because like Legends of Andor was sort of two games jammed into one. It was like this very puzzly, deterministic game married to like this story-based game that was all about like, revealing these cards and the story would progress. And so they really doubled down on that, right? And in this game, it's like set in the land of Andor, and there's a narrator deck, but there is no story. I mean... That's right. Which is kind of surprising.
Although the narration cards are kind of fun, but they're all like set in one moment of time. It's like you're there just during this one attack.
Yeah, it's basically like, hey, there's a monster breathing down your neck, or hey, I think I saw a monster wandering around the bridge here, and then you'll put the monster out there. So it's one of those things where you read it the first couple times, like, oh, cool, and then when the game gets heated, you're just like, put a monster over there, put one there, So it's not really, continuation.
Yeah, but talking more about theme, like it is kind of fun. Like we fought these monsters in a different form in Legends of Andor, and they had no personality. Here they've got like a little bit of personality in a way.
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, there are a couple neat ones. There was like the shadow woman, mage person, and so there is some interesting things there, I suppose. But overall, like, I mean, the theme does work, though, I guess.
Yes,
we should say that. Like, you do feel like you're running around and fighting monsters, and, I mean, I don't feel like it's like those hordes of enemies coming to, like, a tower. It doesn't feel like a tower defense, which I guess you would kind of feel like it would be in a game like this, I suppose.
No, it doesn't feel like a tower defense, but it feels like a puzzle. It does feel like a puzzle, which was like the thing about Legends of Andor that really jumps out at you. Like, it felt like a puzzle to figure out, and this definitely feels that way.
So we might have some other comparisons later, but I do want to point out before we move on too much, like the art on these look really cool, and it's neat that like they flip over and have different numbers, and that's only for this archer character, right? Which is kind of cool. And then the spell books, each of them kind of has their own stuff, and the art on these look really nice, and they they have like the you can flip them over to show that you've used them or whatever. And so I really think that's pretty cool. So the components are pretty good on this.
Yeah, and the iconography is good. Some of the rulebook could do with a little better, but they're very clear and readable. Like exactly they're the three abilities.
Sure, yeah. And we should also mention though there's a lot of free actions you can do on your turn, and you can kind of intersperse them through your obligatory action. And like they give you these two reference cards, and it's like, where is just this one little card that just says, these are your actions.
Here's the turn structure.
Yeah.
Here's the turn structure.
Crazy. You would really, I mean, it just, you don't each need one. You just one of them to go like, oh yeah, these are the free actions, fine.
There are a couple things like that in this game.
Yeah, and like the assortment, since these are all sort of different numbers, it would have been nice if that assortment that's printed inside in like page 6 of the rulebook,
it does
put it
show
on a card.
You a distribution, but and there were a couple abilities that weren't clear, and a couple things are like put this on the top of this, and it wasn't clear whether it should be on the top of this deck or this deck, and certain objects weren't 100% clear how to play them. Like the rulebook needed just one little extra going over and editing to tweak it up.
Well, when you have a game designed like this, there's quite like you have a lot of weird abilities coming together and card effects, and any kind of like large game ends up having like like a continuing game that's had a lot of expansions. Sometimes can have errata, or like living card games can have that sort of thing. And you could sort of see like even in a game as simple as this, like we've only played like 3 or 4 games of this, and like when we played it, it's like we came up with situations in every game, a couple of different situations where we're like, well, this card sort of circumvents the rules, and it says put it here or do this, and it wasn't really clear. We had to just kind of go with the flow, which could be fine for some people, but I mean, I think there's such a small amount of cards in this game. I feel like those should have come up and maybe been on a quick FAQ on the back or something. Would have been
absolutely.
So I think for sure, one extra page in the rulebook and one card would have been very helpful.
Yeah, I agree. But it was manageable.
Yeah.
It definitely was manageable.
So, I mean, you like the art and the components, and then that's the... So we'll go on to the actual gameplay here, right? So what did you think of... Now, what did you think of the overall...
Yeah, well, I did not have high expectations coming into it.
I had no idea. Had no idea.
But I thought it was... the decisions are good. The decisions are... They're sort of juicy. They're sort of meaty. There's lots of little decision points. And I love this mechanic where you're doing your action, right? It's very clean. You're just picking one card and picking one of the things. So your actual choices are very, very clear, very clean. There's not like this complicated rules to figure out. But you've got this planning that's happening on different time scales, right? One is your immediate action, but you've got this thing where you're deciding which tasks to work to reveal. You have to work to reveal the task. And that issue of figuring out where should we spend our time to gather information that then affects how we play the game. And I love that element. That element of figuring out, well, there are 3 cards here. Let's both work together to reveal what that is, or maybe that's not the right
what's
time.
kind of cool about that is it's very similar to Endangered when you're like spending...
Greg is smiling. Greg is smiling because I was the one that I was thinking for a long time we were playing it.
Yeah.
What is the game that has that thing where you have to spend actions to reveal goals and tasks? But yes, go ahead.
We also reviewed that on the channel.
Yes, we did.
So, yeah.
But that mechanic where it's not just that you have to work to reveal these goals and figure out what's the best meta strategy for doing that, but that other issue of you don't have to complete all 6. So you've got this meta decision going on about which 4 should we spend our time, and it's got that really nice satisfying thing where you're like, we've gone down the road towards this one. Should we abandon it? Like, have things changed, and do we have to switch? And I love that decision making.
So there are, like, one of the goals was, like, which is very interesting, is that, like, I mean, some of them are quite easy. Like, this guy says, do you have 3 friends? Which you're probably going to have, right? Like, one of them brings out 2 more encounter cards, fine. But there's interesting ones, like, there's one where, you know, the monster's strength is equal to all the face-up strengths. And so that creates a decision of, like, well, you know, should we kill these monsters to weaken that monster and then go after that monster? So there's like this, there's a lot going on in this game, and it's very like manageable because it's very deterministic in a lot of ways, right? Like there's no die rolling. You can do what you want to do on your turn. However, you know, whether or not you get the right goals or the right cards, like the monsters or the things that come out, can affect how the game goes for you extremely, right? But it's like Jesse was saying, so you have these decisions of like tactical decisions, like what am I going to do on my turn just to kill this monster or move this thing around? And then are we going towards this goal? Okay, well, maybe we should clear this out so we can go to this goal, and looking at the timing, and it's like you're trying to like balance multiple things and try to like, but it's like, well, maybe come close to this one. Go. It's a very tug of war in a lot of directions.
These multiple tasks at the same time, trying to decide where you should put your energy, and some things help others tasks, some things hurt them. But, and the teamwork in this game, planning for teamwork, huge. Because you can't defeat these things on your own, and your turn, you've only got these 3 actions, maybe more when you get some friends. You need someone's help bringing things to you or unveiling cards. That whole decision of when to turn over cards face up and face down is very interesting, and it's like an interesting puzzle. It's not clear when you should be doing it, and as you pointed out, sorry, one last thing. As you pointed out, there are a bunch of tasks and monsters that are affected by how many things are face up, and you're like, you're juggling a lot of different things.
The closest thing I was expecting was a game like Heroes of Terranoth, where
that's a great comparison.
Here's these monsters, here's these things, let's go fight. And that was going to be what the game was. But in reality, it is very close in the style of game that it is to Legends of Endor, because it is such a puzzle. You have essentially a pick up and deliver game, which is like, I'm going to move these face up and face down cards around to either bring them closer to like the spirit, the water spirit, or bring it to a teammate, or just bring it to an area I don't care about anymore because we did that task. And then, but it's not just that, but it's that like, should it be face up or should it be face down? Can I even turn it up face up or face down? Some characters can, some friends can that you'll unlock. And so you're doing this puzzly game of like moving them and then moving yourself around or your teammate to jump join you. And so there is a real spatial element to it in that way. But at the same time, there's also this combat aspect of like, can I gather my strength? Do I need my teammate to help? How do these characters work together? There's that puzzle of like, I'm building this engine.
That's the other puzzle thing. Like, when do you bulk up? When do you build this engine, get more friends? And then, So
there's that game going on. But then there's the third thing, which is like, these they're going to keep coming out. So like, should you take the opportunity to try to get rid of a bunch of things so you can look at that task? Or should you go to the area where you feel like you can do the most good or get the most benefit out of? And
don't forget the timing about like when to refresh. There's some very clever little tweaking of efficiency where you're like, let me prolong the end of the round a little bit longer so that you can do something before this new stuff comes out. You talked about the determinism in this game. It's really, we've talked about this with a couple of games, but this is sort of the sweet spot that we like. When you're taking your actions, like for a whole round, it's deterministic. Like you're doing what you do, you do. Well, and then occasionally you turn over a card.
And see what it is.
But then at the end of the round, bad stuff happens that you can't anticipate. So it gives you like this nice, very satisfying window that you can do this deterministic planning on and have control. Like, it's random what you turn over, but maybe for that reason you don't turn over. You choose not to turn over those cards.
Well, it kind of makes me think a little bit about a game like, and you can say this about many cooperative games, but like, it's like Pandemic where it's very deterministic. I don't know, I'll take a drink or whatever since we always bring this game up. But it's like, you make your actions, you do the best thing you can, and then the cards come out and you see what happened. That screwed us, so that was the right decision. And so there are a couple elements to it that like the luck kind of feels like it makes a difference, like a bigger difference. Like you could turn over something like this, one of these goals you could turn over early, and it could make a huge difference. Like you're like, that one was done right away.
Yes. You could get lucky and get good cards or get very unlucky. It's true.
Sure. But the biggest part of the game that's really kind of interesting is that these trolls always give you the friends. Like, and when you get the friends, your hand size, will increase, meaning this clock, you
got more time.
It's like in a worker placement, which is kind of neat about it because it's like a worker placement game too, where it's like it's clever that it's all these like things are kind of hidden in this game. Now when we talked about Endangered, this is another link to Endangered, that it was like a very modern game because it had all these sort of things like bashed together, like right, all these things. And this game kind of has it in the very subtle way because in the worker placement, in the beginning of the game you're doing very little, and then by the end of the game you have like so many more actions. Like in a game like Caverna or Agricola, you've got like 4 or 5 workers maybe at the end if you've done really well, and you're doing so much more on your turn.
I think that's a great sort of segue into the pacing part of this game, and I think you're right. Like, it's subtle, the fact that you're getting these friends and objects, but it does make the game on this nice trajectory where you're starting out with just 3, and then you have to refresh it. But then as you get these friends, you've got more cards to choose from, and objects that are one-time use. So you've got this interesting decision there. But it does ramp up nicely. And what's happening on the board is nice too, because you can see this clock very clearly. You can see how much time you've got left, and you're whittling down these things, and you feel the palpable sense of time running out. But it does feel like your turns are getting more interesting and more powerful.
Well, but in terms of and I don't care about that. Like Jesse and I really do not like randomness in games. Like the more, there has to be some, but the more there is, you're getting on that. Like it's our enjoyment for the game is going to decrease rapidly. But I do see that like if you get some of these friends early, your chances of winning or doing quite well are going to go through the roof. I feel.
Yes, but I guess the counterpoint to that is one of the things if you know that going in, you could spend more time moving through decks and flipping cards, right? That's something that we didn't really do that strategically. True. You could be like, let's dig through those decks and get the stuff.
In the games where we got trolls early and we killed them really quickly to get friends, like we did much better.
Well, that's true. But I'll say what you all often say, which is that the amount of luck and the swinginess is balanced against the speed and time length of the game. And for me, like, this is a nice short, it's not super short, but it's maybe like an hour. But at that length of a game, and because it's so enjoyable, even when you're losing, that's completely fine. Like if we have an unlucky game,
definitely that's not. I'm just saying. I'm just speaking about in
Sure,
general how interesting it is. It's sort of like that worker placement, and it's like, well, if you didn't get your workers early, you've lost a chunk of time that you can't get back, and your score is going to be impacted. But that's fine because, like you say, the game is interesting. Now, I think that's a good segue to talk about kind of the characters. So I think when we first played it, they recommend you play with the simplest characters, and we took them. I took this archer, Jesse took the warrior, and I thought that was cool to learn about the game and stuff. But once we got to the other characters, whoa, they're way more interesting. Now Jesse played the water spirit character, and you developed this engine that was really cool, where you had a character that could pull face down people to you, a person that could flip people face down, and so you'd be pulling these people to you, and then leaving this water spirit in this area and just grinding against the monsters and just murdering them like a murder machine, which was really neat. And so like you have your own sort of, like, I don't want to call it an engine, but you kind of like chain your actions together to create like a an engine.
It does have a little bit of there's a tiny bit of engine building, but mostly it's not engine building, but it does. They play so differently. The different characters play so differently, and they've got totally different objects they manipulate in a way that it really feels like you're playing a different game when you play with a different character.
I would 100% agree. When we got to the other characters, I was like, this is really cool. And the thing is, like, you're playing them and you're like, okay, this is how you play them, that's kind of cool. But I think, like, you're not getting the full thing. I think, like, you could definitely get better at each character.
Yes,
right?
And figure out how they work together. That it's definitely requires working together. It's not just your character do this. You're going to have to find ways to work with the other players. Now, in addition, I mean, I do think we talked about sort of confidence in design. This idea of having 3 cards.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not the modern card game is deck building where you've got the fact that they just said you're going to have 3 cards. That's your character. It's the fact that you have 3 cards and each one you can do one of 3 things. That's very clever, and they interact like the different choices are different combinations. It's actually very satisfying to look at that and try to tweak some optimization out of those. So they feel so different, the different characters.
I mean, they could have done something like there's a lot of games where like you roll dice and then you pick like, okay, well, I got to move a fight, or you can do a couple different things and you can pick from those actions. But this is a great way to limit what you can do, but it's like you have a lot of choices, but not so overwhelming, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, and it is super strategic, but it's a good way to like weight the actions by putting some of the more powerful, like the wizard character has like this really powerful thing of letting you anybody ready a card, but this is one of her things where she can cast 2 spells. So it sort of puts the better moves on one card, so you can't really just do all the most powerful stuff. So you really have to think about it. Now, that being said, about any character being able to ready a card, every time we were playing this, it was like, how am I helping you? How are you setting my turn up? How am I setting you up? What are you going to do with it? Oh, if I pull this monster over here, you can kill it. Okay, fine. And then I'll turn this one up and I'll send it over to you. Or, hey, I'll shoot my arrow over. And
and we had moments when we were playing where we said, okay, let's really think this out because this is important. Like, it did reward those moments where, like, let's really figure out how to do that. And I love that it wasn't, like, that's we said before, like the sweet spot, it gave us that room to do that really detailed planning. And then sometimes we were like, well, it's too much. Let's just make our move. And the fact that some random stuff happens means you're not overwhelmed planning.
Which is great.
It's really good. Now, in addition to the variety of these characters and having so many to play in different combinations, I really liked the variety of the monster stuff. They all felt like they had their own little quirk. It's almost reminded me of Ethnos a little in that each monster, like you see the trolls, there are multiple trolls. It's not one of these games where there's a completely random deck and everything is new. It's like we knew these kinds of guys behave this kind of way, and they all have their own little benefits. And like the super strong one did something, like it made it interesting to see, like, should we tackle this one? Everything had a side effect, right? There's a benefit for doing everything, which chains up. You kept talking about chaining. So, like, it had this fun element of, like, where should we go? And because this will piggyback onto this.
The chaining is one of the most satisfying things because, and it's really a clever design, the way that they put some of the rewards on some of these characters. And I'm going to point something out here, like, where it's like, after victorious battle, like you kill this flogger, you may turn over 1 top face down and counter card. And there were so many turns where we were like, okay, if I kill this, it will allow me to like pull this card over to here, and then on your turn you can kill this, and this has an ability to like knock this thing out. And it was like figuring out what order we could do. And it's like what we talk about often, what's the most important thing when it comes to like a game being enjoyable? Decisions. Are the decisions interesting? And this game, every single round, what if I did this, maybe if I did, no. And then Jesse would chime in, oh, no, move this there. Or what if I do this and I'll kill this? And then you know what I mean? I'm like, okay. Or maybe we'll do that, but then do this instead. Okay, yeah. And it was like every single turn, big discussion
very
about
puzzly,
what to do.
Very interesting, and very tight. Like, it's interesting that like the movement and the flipping of cards almost you feel like when you break this out, you're like, let's go fight. But really, you have to be very clever and efficient with the other stuff, setting up battles, moving. You're like, oh, I need to turn over a card to fight it. That's a little. If you can tweak a little bit of efficiency out of that, instead of wasting one of your 3 turns to turn over a card, if you can change some action. Yeah.
And the goals are really cool and interesting too, because like, you know, like for instance, this guy, you have to kill a bunch of those fluggers, right, and have them in the trophy room. But the thing is, like, some of the monsters like require you to spend monsters out of the trophy room, so you think, well, maybe I shouldn't do that because some of the goals want to have lots of cards over there. So there's like. But then, you know, one time we're like, well, should we kill these fluggers? Okay, but like we might not get the goal that requires to kill.
I really love that. I love that issue of you really need to get the information to know what goals are available, and then you have some hard, long range planning to do, and be like, do we go for that? Like, is this the time to go?
And
for
there's
that?
this guy here, which like you have to get rid of these items that are useful, which also increase your hand, by the way, which is kind of cool. And so do you use them for their power, or do you hang on to them because you want to use them for him? And then there was some cool spatial ones where like, you know, where there's like a ballista, and it was like you needed to like move, you know, have
you
that
need
area.
to have one area clear, so we were going back and forth.
Yeah, and so like the goals are all so interesting. We didn't even see them all, and I mean, I gotta like the teamwork, the discussion. I mean, the whole thing was like so interesting and enjoyable, and the variety is there. Like, there's a lot of different monsters. They're going to come out in different orders. They're going to change the puzzle substantially, like their abilities, like whatever their reward is, and not everything has a reward, you know. And like, but when they do, and some of them have detriments where you're like, well, we can't kill this one because that detriment is too bad right now. But then you can sort of like this monster, the Flugger, is powerful depending on how many things are out. So, let's kill a couple of these, and then this guy will be weaker, and then we'll kill him. So all that working together is a really enjoyable package, you know.
Yeah.
So, and the scaling is actually quite interesting, because I thought when I looked at the spirit water spirit character, I thought, well, this character is really good in a multiplayer game, but it turns out it was really powerful, and you know, it's different. Like, it's the scaling seemed to. I mean, we didn't play it obviously more than 2 players, but this is co-op for 2, of course. But like, it didn't feel like that, right? Like, it felt like that's going to be an interesting character, a powerful character, in a number of settings, and it's just going to change the game, right? So if you played 3 players, instead, you know, you might choose different benefits based on the side of this game.
Yeah, and look how clever this system is, right? It's like you've got this special ability, but now, so it's changed the actions that are available, but you have to spend your actions to move it. So, and then to use it. So like, just with these 3 little cards, having these new things on them changes the entire way you play, and it's all right here. Like, okay, you got this thing. You now have to figure out how to use it efficiently. Maybe it's time to segue to some of the negatives of the game, if there are any. And I have, it's not really a negative, but like for the pinnacle of games for me, one of the things that they share is that you can say, today I'm going to try this strategy. Today I'm going to try the planting vegetable strategy. Today I'm going to try the building gear strategy. And this does not have the depth of strategy, I don't think, to tackle that. You do have to figure out how to use your character, but it's more tactical. It's not like, how can we try this?
I completely disagree with that.
Really? Yeah,
because I feel like you could say, I'm going to play this character so that I can do this with your character, right? Like you're, like, for instance, I could say, you take the spirit character that, you know, like has pluses, and then I'm going to play this guy that pulls monsters to me. So this guy here has this ability, you always like me to say the name, Orphan, only it's not spelled orphan, whatever. That would be very confusing if I were this guy. I'd be like, orphan. Okay, I'm not an orphan, and it's not spelled like orphan. Can you, like that would be like a nightmare. Okay, but he pulls a face-up monster to him. So I could say, I'm going to be this guy. You be her. You put your water spirit here. I'll stand here with you. Like, these are not the right pawns, but... And I'll just keep pulling monsters over, and you smash them. That's a strategy right there with two characters I just thought of right now.
Yeah.
So I think that you could absolutely
but like if we
do that.
We couldn't... If we played it 3 times with these strategies, it's hard to think of, like, what... Let's try a different strategy. Let's try this. Like, I feel like it's more tactical. Like, you have to base your strategy based on what comes out and what goals are out.
I think it has, like, sort of a shifting... strategy of like
you
your long-term
adjust.
strategy is always shifting, which I think is pretty cool.
Oh, very cool. I'm just saying I think that the what comes out is going to force you to figure out the best tactical strategy to tackle that, rather than giving you the freedom to try very different strategies.
I mean, I feel like we've been really all over the map with this, like a little bit, like, but it's just there's so much going on. It's hard to like, you know, but essentially, like, just to kind of circle back around and kind of like tidy up. Like, I gotta say, like, you know, to me this game is, okay, what are we doing right now? What's the best thing? Should we go after this? Should we move these around? Should we shift this? Oh, we found this goal. Okay, is that what we want to go for right now? Should we wait? You know, should we power up? Why don't I bring you to me? How is my character interacting with yours? And then constant discussion, and like probably one of the most integral teamwork games I've ever played. I feel like there was such a serious amount of teamwork going on. It is insane, and the way that your characters are working.
I think.
And then you're seeing different kinds of monsters and chaining actions together, kind of building a mini engine. You're getting these other characters. Like, it is just constantly like mutating and revolving, and it's just really very interesting. And I feel like every turn of the game we are having a massive discussion, and I feel like it's a lot of enjoyment.
It was consistently, every turn was enjoyable. Yes. The teamwork and the collaboration and cooperating and coordinating stuff was enjoyable at every step of the way. It's just at the right level of thinkiness and enjoyability that...
And I want to try different characters. Like, I love that water spirit, but then I was like, no, I want to be the wizard. You know, and then, like, the whole time Jesse was playing the water spirit, I'm like... I was like, not optimally playing mine.
Coveting my character.
So but it's just so neat. And I want to play the different characters, and I want to try, you know, like, I mean, and I'm looking at these different goals that some we didn't get and some of the monsters we didn't get. And I feel like this is a serious amount of replayability. Yeah. And, you know, I actually kind of think about, I was thinking about that other game that's really, Spirit Island, that's really popular. It has, like, so much going on, and there's all the things are different. And this almost feels like
wow, in that, come up with a couple games that have some very interesting ties to that.
Because, like,
Heroes of Terranoth was the first one, and Spirit Island, you're right. There are some commonalities here.
In the way that, like, I feel like the spirit, no pun intended, the spirit of Spirit Island, the spirit of the game where it's like, here's my character, I'm making it do this little engine, and it's the same in Heroes of Terranoth. Here's this character, and I'm building my engine and how that's working with you, right? And so, but I feel like that game has like so much where it's like, okay, well, I don't know what's going to happen in the middle of my turn, and then this has like, almost feels like a streamlined version of that game in some ways, right? In the spirit of that game, where it's trying to get you to work together and have these like moving things around or moving the guys on the board or whatever. It's got that same sense, but it's like so much easier to manage in a good way, and your choices are still as interesting, if not more interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're going too far. We've played Spirit Island a couple of times, but I think you're making a great point about Spirit Island and the connections, because Spirit Island, you do have these cards personalized for each character, but I think what you're absolutely right about is, think about what we enjoy most about the co-op games is working together. And Spirit Island makes it so hard to coordinate turns and work together, and this completely flips that. This makes it so easy and necessary and enjoyable to work together. And the fact that the board is so readable, everything is it's got some good depth, but it's completely manageable, and yet not obvious how to solve these puzzles.
I'm going to tell you this, like, this to me, like, when you look at this game, like, it works so well. Like, it is like insanely well designed, because not because I look at them like, and I just think, oh yes, of course this is well designed. But like, when you think about how any bit of this, if it was just a little out of whack, the whole game would not work. And the fact that like it's able to have all these little spinning plates in the air, and all these variety of characters and cards, and the way that everything fits together like and works well, is an insanely good job of design. I think this designer like really hit it out of the park.
Yeah.
In terms of like just, I can't imagine how, like, if you were playtesting this and you were like, okay, well, this ability is too powerful. This has to drop to a 6. This monster needs to not have that power. Like, it's insane. But it's so big of a game, and it like in terms of how many cards and variables. Like, we gave it a little knock in the beginning about like, well, that was not clear. But I mean, like, it is like an insane amount of things like that just fit together so well and make such an engaging puzzle.
It's sort of it's opaque why these things work, like why it's not exactly clear to you like why this is on this card, this is on this card, these choices are here, but it's clear there's some real logic to it because it does feel tight, it does feel balanced. The decisions always feel like it's rarely super clear what to do, right? Like, it's always clear the kind, maybe what's good or bad, but it's not that clear what.
I'm going to do you one better for that. It's clear a number of things you should do. What's not clear is which is the best thing. So, I mean, every single turn I could pitch 4 different things we could do, and you could do the same. And then we would say, well, what's the best way to go? Which is a sign of a fantastic game.
I agree.
And I'll tell you this, more on the designer, like I really want to know what else he's designed. And I know you looked it up earlier, and we don't have to go through it, but I'm so impressed with this design. I want to see what else they've done.
Well, I know what's his name? It's on the box. It's Gerhard Hecht. Okay, so he's a German designer. I know he's made some expansions for Legends of Andor, and then a couple other games that we don't know. One is like the Silk Road, a bigger game in 2013. This game is 2019 or 2020. But yeah, it's a clean, tight game, and it's almost like, because the length is so right, like. This scratches that puzzle itch that the part of me that loved the parts of Legend of Andor that I liked. This kind of scratches, and without all the negatives.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole other conversation. Okay. It's hard to honestly, it's really hard to compare Legends of Andor and this game. Like, there are just so many differences. But
so here's another negative knock on the game, though. We recently reviewed Marvel United, which does also have some commonality of feel with this game. Would you would agree?
I would absolutely agree.
Okay, so but one of the things when we reviewed Marvel United, we talked about, well, if it had no expansions, it's sort of a consumable game, so it's here. But with all the variety of the expansions, it makes it more interesting. Now, this franchise does not get that kind of love. There's probably no expansions coming for the Liberation of Rietburg.
Well, it is a pretty big IP. I mean, there's got to be in the pipeline when the movies come out.
It wouldn't be surprising if there's 1 or 2, but very minimal.
I don't
know.
So
that's kind of sad. Like, I like to see more characters, more friends, more monsters, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, if this game had an expansion, I would absolutely say so. And it's interesting that you mentioned that about Marvel United, because it almost feels like, because we had talked about Marvel United as being like a real gateway game.
We liked it a lot, too.
Sure. Yeah, because it was much quicker, it was enjoyable, but it was way simpler. And I mean,
I would agree.
Like, the design of this game is, and nothing against Eric Lang, I mean, they were designing a much simpler game. This design is so much more impressive to me than Marvel United.
That you say
but
that.
I will say this.
I think I would agree.
Marvel United shares a lot of commonalities with this game as well, but I feel like if somebody was a gateway, Marvel United is like a gateway game, and if you gave Marvel United to somebody that was like, oh, that was cool, like I want to kind of go next level, or this game was cool, but I wanted more. Yeah, this is the next one rung on that ladder. I think
I would agree. On the same, the counterpoint to that is this would be a little hard to advise to give to a new family of board gamers with kids, right?
I'm saying like a next,
I know what you're saying. That's what. But I'm saying the other side of that coin is, this would be a little hard to give to a family of new gamers, right? Like, the strategy is a little deeper, a little more unintuitive.
Yes, I think this is definitely a gamer's game for sure, which is probably why we like so much of it. Yeah. So yeah, I think we can we can rate it. I guess as we're talking, this is kind of the endangered thing.
You're running the calculation.
I really feel really good about it. So I mean, I guess it's funny because like we already kind of summarized, I suppose, but I felt like we're gonna play this once or twice, and I'm never gonna think about it again. And the truth is that like, you know, I really enjoyed playing it. It was stressful at times. Like I was like, but I really it was that crunchiness to it. But I want to play this some more.
Yeah, and I this is how I would say it. Like when we played Marvel United, like I wanted to play each villain once, and then I felt like I was done with it. If we were taking an hour-long break at a board game store and you're like, let's play a game of this, I would be like, absolutely. Let's try the random tasks, and it would be a different game. Like it would play differently, right? Depending on what random tasks and monsters,
you could even
it would feel like a different game.
You could even play like a thing where you just played these tasks and then you just threw those when you were done with that game. You want to play another one, play the next bunch of tasks, you know, and even the combos of characters, finding out how they work together quite well. Yeah.
So you ready to rate it?
Yeah, let's do it.
You want to start? Or you want me to start?
No, you start.
All right. I guess I'd give it an 8. An 8 for me. Yeah, I mean, Marvel United was a 7.
I don't remember what I did.
It's so hard to go from, you know, the numeric ratings. I mean, they're just a rough guide.
Yeah.
But I guess I would give this an 8 for its time, for how long the game plays. It is super enjoyable. It doesn't have that complete satisfying thing of Pandemic as a system, but it's really good, and it's a very impressive design. You've mentioned this before. Like this designer, this is a very impressive design, and I wish more games had this kind of different character, this way of saying here's a new character that plays completely differently. I'd love to see that in more games.
Yeah. Well, I'm eager to try like different combos and like see how you can kind of like break the game with like. You know, like I mentioned, those two characters that I just thought of there, where it was like, I'll pull monsters over here, and you just keep smashing them, like, you know, the hammer and anvil type thing. I'm going to give it an 8.5, because I think I think it's fantastic. It's really well designed, and it's fun to play. Lots of decisions, and big time teamwork, which is something that you and I really enjoyed. Yeah. So, you can also watch some playthroughs on that. We got them up on the channel, right? Like so.
Yeah, playthrough. You can watch our 5-minute before you buy video.
Yeah. Which you would need to do if you'd already watched this. And
what else? And consider subscribing to the channel and maybe even becoming a Patreon supporter.
Yeah. Hey, listen, let me ask you this. If somebody says you play 10 games of this or 1 game of Legends of Andor.
Yeah, I'd rather play 10 games of this.
We should actually, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the setup of either of those games. Setting up Legends of Andor is a nightmare. Like, this game you could play like in... you could play set up 2 games of Legends of Andor, or you could play 1 game of this.
I mean, can we say a little bit about Legends of Andor has one real thing going for it that's so amazing, which is it's one of the few games that we played that really tried to be a real puzzle. Like, play this and you're not going to get it right. You're going to have to play it like 5 times to get it right. But the more when you play this, this showed, like we've talked about the cooperation, like every turn cooperation, and that's really not the case. In Legends of Andor.
Well, this game was fantastic. The designer did a really amazing job. Like, I can't believe I would be so proud if I had designed this game.
Yeah, it deserves more attention.
Yeah, I hope it does. Yeah. Although, I mean, come on, the name
could have used a better name.
What is it, Jesse? Quick.
The Liberation of Rietburg.
Ooh, that's pretty good.
All right, folks. We'll see you next time.
Ready? Okay. I forgot how. Okay.
That's good. That's not a good way to start.
Right, let's do it. Let's go. Ready?
What's the show where he's like, there's some.
Hold on.
There's some comedy where it's,
yeah, there is something I can't remember.
Maybe Mr. Show or one of those.
Oh yeah, it's like, can I borrow a quarter? Can I have a? Can I get change for $1?